Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a sign that something important is happening.
Yeah. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We said that we would start on time at 11:15. It's 11:14. But welcome, ladies and gentlemen, both of you, to those of you here in the room at Eurojust and those following online, to this press conference following the official launch of the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine here at Eurojust. There will be short introductions held by Mr. DJ Rangers, European Commissioner for Justice, Mr. Ladislav Amro, President of Eurojust, Mr. Andrei Kostin, Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Mr. Karim A.A. Khan, KC, Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and Mr. Kenneth Polite, Assistant Attorney General of the United States. We've already sent out a press release, and you've got a press release here. A recording of this press conference will be available afterwards on our YouTube channel, as well as a recording of the formal launch event. If you want to ask questions afterwards, for those of you following it online, you can do so by using the chat option. And I would like to give the floor, first of all, to Commissioner Evans.
Merci, thank you very much. I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm very proud to be here today because it was the opportunity to launch the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, so the so-called ICPA. And let me use this opportunity to first thank Eurojust and the President Ladislav Amro, not only for hosting today's launch event, but also for their extraordinary efforts to make the quick setup of the ICPA possible. It is thanks to them and the other partners present here today that we can set this first important step to ensure accountability for the international crimes committed during Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Today's event is an important testimony of our commitment to the global fight against impunity. We cannot tolerate the gross violation of the prohibition of the use of force, one of the fundamental rules of the international rule-based order, and a bedrock principle of the UN Charter. It is specifically in times in which these fundamental principles are so fiercely challenged that we are obliged to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Since the very beginning of the war, Eurojust has been at the very forefront of the EU's efforts to provide Ukraine with necessary means to ensure that the perpetrators of this war do not go unpunished. It has done so by supporting the establishment of the Joint Investigation Team, comprising Ukraine, Lithuania, and Poland as its members. By now, Estonia, Latvia, Slovakia, and Romania have all joined the JIT. In addition, the International Criminal Court, which is present here today, also participates in this joint investigation team. With the ICPA, Eurojust will provide a structure to support and enhance the national investigations into the crime of aggression against Ukraine and coordinate closely with the investigations of the International Criminal Court.
Sorry, Mr. Randall, sorry to interrupt you, but there seems to be a slight sound problem.
Yeah.
So we just have to wait 1 minute.
Yeah, please.
We apologize for this. There's a slight problem with the sound.
Yeah, we'll take my coffee.
have been removed from the meeting. This call will now be disconnected. Goodbye.
This is meant to impress you. Apparently we had to reset the system, which will take a few minutes, and it's hopefully will be resolved soon.
No, it was working.
Yeah, we do apologise. It was just the last 2 minutes which could not be heard due to a technical error. So I'll ask you to restart again, Mr. Render.
We just have to check whether everything is as it should be.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory and call again, or ask your operator for assistance. This is a recording.
It'll be all right. Mind your feet for a Well, the gremlins will come back and find me.
We're waiting to be sure. Investigation is already started.
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, our apologies for this. We are working on a technical issue, but we will continue with the press conference here. Recording will be available online, and we will send a message to all those following online that it should be available shortly again. So, sorry to have interrupted you, Mr. Edward. If you could perhaps start your introduction again. Thank you very much, and our apologies.
Thank you. So, I said that I'm very proud to be here today for the event that we have organized to launch the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, the so-called ICPA. And let me first use this opportunity to thank Georgios and the President for all the efforts to make the quick setup of the ICPA possible. And it's thanks to them and the other partners present here today that we can set this first important step to ensure accountability for the international crimes committed during Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Today's launch of the ICPA is an important testimony of our commitment to the global fight against impunity. We cannot tolerate the gross violation of the prohibition of the use of force, one of the fundamental rules of the international rule-based order and a bedrock principle of the UN Charter. It is specifically in times in which these fundamental principles are so fiercely challenged that we are obliged to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Since the very beginning of the war, Eurojust has been at the very forefront of the EU's efforts to provide Ukraine with necessary means to ensure that the perpetrators of this war do not go unpunished. It has done so by supporting the establishment of a joint investigation team comprising Ukraine, Lithuania, and Poland as its members. And by now, Estonia, Latvia, Slovakia, and Romania have all joined the JIT. In addition, the International Criminal Court, which is present here today, also participates in this JIT, and we have organized a very good collaboration with our colleagues from the United States. With the ICPA, Eurojust will provide a structure to support and enhance the national investigations into the crime of aggression against Ukraine and coordinate closely with the investigations of the International Criminal Court for crimes that fall within the court jurisdictions. Through the ICPA, Eurojust will support national authorities in securing, storing, and analyzing evidence and building cases for future trials. Eurojust's new core international crimes evidence database, developed after the extension of its mandate last year, will further contribute to this important exercise. Very important to store with a very high level of security all the evidence and then to exchange those evidence with all the prosecutors at the national level or in international jurisdictions. The Member States will play a crucial role in collecting evidence, identifying witnesses and possible suspects, in executing arrest warrants, including those issued by the International Criminal Court, and in ensuring that the perpetrators of such heinous crimes cannot hide from justice. It is clear that in all efforts to ensure full accountability for the crimes committed in Ukraine, the importance of coordination and cooperation between all national and international justice actors cannot be overestimated. The ICPA will function as an essential piece to ensure accountability, complementary to the existing accountability framework. Let me just conclude my intervention by highlighting that it's only through a joint and comprehensive approach that we can achieve full accountability. And this is the essence of the ICPA. And I'm therefore delighted that the Centre is taking
This
up
meeting
its
number
duties.
is not valid, or the
Today
meeting has not yet
It's the
started.
first step.
Enter the meeting number
Due
followed by
to such
pound.
a centre into place, it will be possible to collect evidence, to prepare prosecution, but of course we need to find a place to organize a trial about the crime of aggression, and we'll continue the discussions about that. I'm just hoping that in the future it will be possible to amend the Rome Statute to give such a competence to the International Criminal Court, the normal way for the future. But for the moment, you know that we continue some discussions about the creation of a jurisdiction where it will be possible to organize a trial about the crime of aggression, a dedicated tribunal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Enders. Mr. Hamra, if you would like to take the floor, please.
Thank you so much, dear ladies and gentlemen. Also, very well welcome on my behalf. Thank you for joining us here in The Hague. Over the past 20 years, Eurojust has built up a very solid track record in providing operational, technical, logistical and financial support
This
to
meeting number is
national
not valid, or
investigations,
the meeting
national
has not yet
prosecutors
started.
working on
Enter the
cross-border
meeting
cases.
number followed
From
by
the very
pound.
beginning of the war in Ukraine, we have been at the forefront of the accountability efforts, working side by side with the Ukrainian Prosecutor's General's Office. We helped to set up the joint investigation team focused on international crimes committed in Ukraine, and we also introduced a core international crime evidence database. And for some weeks already, we have been receiving submissions. Up to now, we have submissions from 10 countries already, and many will follow. A crucial next step of this journey is setting up the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression, which is a unique international cooperation platform without any precedent in legal history. The ICPA will support national investigators and prosecutors from Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland who are investigating the crime of aggression. They will be working from these premises where they will benefit from our state-of-art analytical, legal, financial and logistical support. As it was already mentioned, the key purpose of having the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression is to secure crucial evidence, start building up the case already now. We don't want to wait until the end of the conflict. We decided that we will support our partners which started their own national investigations, and we will centralize already available evidence analyze that evidence and also identify possible evidentiary gaps through our experts working here at Eurojust. We will also translate evidence and relevant documents into both Ukrainian and English to ensure that they can be used before different national jurisdictions as well as national courts. Finally, it's no coincidence that we are joined here today by the prosecutor of the ICC, Mr. Khan, and the Assistant Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Pollitt. In addition to ICCs and US, other countries will relevant evidence or information and organization such as a EU advisory mission to Ukraine are expected to join the ICPA in coming months. We believe that through these united international efforts, we hope that the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression will become a symbol of our unwavering commitment to uphold the rule of law and bring an end to impunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. Mr. Kostin, may I ask you to take the floor, please?
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to echo what was already said by Commissioner Reinders and President Hamran. Today, we gather here on occasion of a truly historic moment. I would say an epoch-defining moment when the civilized world not only voices, but also shows by concrete actions that accountability is what matters the most. Today marks the day when we have launched the operation of the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. The center, housed in Eurojust premises, and I would like to thank my dear friend Vladislav for all his efforts, is the mechanism that will facilitate and support national judicial investigations into the crime of aggression in the member states that participate in our joint investigation team. This is the framework within which we will exchange information, expertise, evidence in relation to the crime of aggression, and will design and implement a common investigative and prosecutorial strategy. The team of our 4 prosecutors from Ukraine are now in The Hague and start their work from today. The work of the center will contribute to the efficient and comprehensive investigation and prosecution of the crime of aggression, which is an original sin, commission of which opened the floodgate for 100,000 of other international crimes, including targeted killing of civilians, sexual violence, torture, forcible displacement of civilians, including of children, looting, and many others. Russia's aggression against Ukraine and its continuous use of force against sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence that threatened Ukraine's very existence is not only directed against my country. It stands as a global threat to peace, security, and stability. For this reason, it is paramount to display our preparedness that accountability for the crime of aggression is a central tenet of our political, legal, and moral agenda. We all know that crime of aggression is a leadership crime and is a remaining weak spot in the international criminal justice architecture. However, the international law and relevant mechanisms need to reflect and respond to the modern-day realities and challenges. The possibility to develop and reinvigorate them is in our own hands, and today we showed an example, which is only the first step that will allow us to streamline our international efforts to facilitate investigation and prosecution of this supreme international crime. As I said this morning, justice gives rise to peace. There can be no peace without arm of justice reaching to all planners, all architects of this crime that has threatened not only Ukraine's sovereignty and freedom, but stability and functionality of international security and legal system. Therefore, I am confident that the result of our work will have a long-standing effect and will contribute to the strengthening of accountability system on international level. I thank each and every of my colleagues, dear friends and collaborators that have contributed to the establishment of the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. We stand and will stand united for justice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kostin, and by now the connection is re-established. I understood, Mr. Khan, if you would like to take the floor, please.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, thank you so much for making the time to come here to Eurojust today to hear this press conference. It was just over a year ago, in April of last year, when for the first time in the history of the ICC, we joined the joint investigative team that had been established in relation to allegations of crimes that were being committed in Ukraine. And what motivated me to join that JIT as a participant was not only the hospitality and the welcome of President Ladislav Hamran, the good collegial support that was developing from the Commissioner Didier Reynders, who's next to me, and the Commission, and these shared values, but a realization that for justice to work, it's predicated upon partnerships. Partnerships with state parties, partnerships with non-state parties, partnerships with civil society, and better communication, because we are in a world in which there is a very imperfect application of the law. Instead of wringing our hands and lamenting it, we need to play our part to make it stronger and apply it with more consistency. Now, what led to the joining of the JIT last April as a participant is the same motivation that led us to join today the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. We can't hope to achieve accountability anywhere under any national authority, and we know about the principle of complementarity, unless evidence is preserved, unless it is collected, unless it is well understood. And this really is I think the scheme of the ICPA, to work with the joint investigative team, which already has proved its worth in terms of allegations of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. We didn't convene this for a photo opportunity or to have the opportunity, the wonderful opportunity to speak to members of the media. It really is an intent to make sure the law is of increasing relevance around the world, and now in relation to Ukraine, to people that need it, people that are dispossessed, that are refugees, that are living in fear, that have mourned the loss of their loved ones moving forward. And I think this ability to collect information regarding the crime of aggression, in addition to the other core crimes that come within the ICC's jurisdiction, is one that we have to grasp. Now, I couldn't agree more with the statement of Didier Reynders, the Commissioner of Justice of the European Union. The natural home for the crime of aggression is the Rome Statute. It's an amendment to the Rome Statute that allows the law to apply with principle equally and applying to all state parties effectively. Now that's for others to work with, but I think this initiative, with the support of the United States, again as a non-state party, is a testament to the reawakening, the wake-up moment that we need to make sure we do better. By any analysis, Ukraine does not represent the first act of aggression that has taken place since the end of the Second World War. But we have to try to strive and find a way for our future generations for peace and stability in the world, that the provisions of the UN Charter, the foundational principle of the UN Charter, which is the specific settlement of disputes and the prohibition on the crime of aggression, is something that we need to chisel into the architecture, so it's no longer a concept that is frozen in time in terms of crimes against peace that was prosecuted in Nuremberg with the great opening speech of Robert Jackson and the other prosecutors in the Nuremberg judgment. When I say that everybody has a role to play, that there's no place for spectators. It's very true. At the ministerial that was co-hosted by myself and the Foreign Minister of the Netherlands last year, we announced a dialogue group. The Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Andrei Kostin, and the fantastic work he and his colleagues are doing. We kicked that off last week in terms of trying to coordinate with other actors in the United Nations, international organizations, and of course the European entities and national authorities. So we know what each other are doing in broad terms and we don't duplicate. We've worked together in terms of trying to embrace civil society. Last week, the European Ombudsperson gave an award to the publication that my office produced along with Eurojust and the Genocide Network to give guidance to civil society. So this is the beginning of a process. It requires further effort, it requires focus, but I think it is meaningful. And I think the most important thing is for us, together with the help of other state parties, non-state parties, international organizations, and many of those watching this press conference, is to make sure that when the microphones are turned off, we don't get diverted from our fundamental responsibility at this moment in time to make sure the law is felt as relevant to those people in need of it the most. As I've said repeatedly, we're not on the side of Ukraine. We're on the side of justice. We are independent and impartial, and we need to find common cause with anybody that wishes to have a world for our children, for our futures, with less crime and more justice. And I think this represents an important step in that ultimate destination that we have to aspire and suffer and work towards reaching. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Mr. Pollitt, may I ask you to take the floor, please?
Good morning. The United States Department of Justice is proud to stand with our European partners and to be among the first to participate in the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine. I want to thank everyone who has played a role in launching the ICPA, including my close friends and colleagues assembled here on the stage with me. The ability of Eurojust to operationalize the concept of this center within months is absolutely remarkable, and it demonstrates the ingenuity of this exceptional agency. The Justice Department's newly appointed U.S. Special Prosecutor for the Crime of Aggression, Jessica Kim, will represent the United States at the center, and she will have unfettered access to the substantial body of expertise and resources that the department has amassed in response to Russia's unlawful war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. The ICPA is the most recent addition to the ecosystem for investigating and prosecuting atrocity crimes committed in Ukraine. And the center complements other domestic, regional, and international efforts to promote accountability and to combat impunity. Just 2 weeks ago, our Attorney General Merrick Garland visited The Hague so that he could see and observe firsthand the robust response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine by our Dutch partners and at Eurojust, Europol, and the International Criminal Court, indeed becoming the first Attorney General to visit the ICC. During his first visit, the Attorney General pledged that the United States would contribute to the Eurojust core international crimes evidence database, and I am proud to announce that last week the United States made its initial contribution to this very important database. It will not be our last. So today we honor the launch of the ICPA. Tomorrow we roll up our sleeves and get back to work, and together we will pursue justice no matter how long it takes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollitt. We now have time for questions. We will take a bit more time for this in view of the technical error we had before. Who would like to take the floor? A question from Agence France-Presse, please. Could you use the microphone, sir?
Danny Kemp from Agence France-Presse. A question for Mr. Pollitt, if I may. I mean, you mentioned the Attorney General's visit last week, historic visit last week to the recently to the ICC. You're talking today about how you're working now with ICPA. Can you explain why you're prepared to work with ICPA and not to be a member state of the ICC, which is, after all, investigating war crimes in Ukraine? Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. And again, the United States believes in the fundamental mission of the ICPA. We are committed to helping to develop and build significant cases against those leaders who have prepared, initiated, funded, and perpetrated these tremendous efforts of aggression against the Ukrainian people. We also support all mechanisms of ensuring accountability and justice, whether it is regional, national, international actors. That includes our colleagues at the International Criminal Court. That includes our colleagues at the United Nations. We are confident that we can support all of those actors without necessarily being a member of the Rome Statute.
Thank you, Mr. Polite. We have a question here from Reuters.
Hi, Anthony Deutsch here. Mr. Reinders, you mentioned that the center will prepare prosecutions. I'd like to ask specifically, though, will the center actually identify suspects, and will it be able to prepare indictments? Thank you.
First of all, I want maybe to repeat what I've said before. In our work, what we're trying to do is to provide all the necessary tools for the prosecutors to do their job, so to organize investigations and prosecutions, and also to the tribunals and the courts to do the same, to be able to organize a trial to decide. I'm saying that because I want to, of course, organize the independent process of the prosecutors and that of the judges. But what we're trying to do here is first to be sure it's possible to collect evidence, also the crime of aggression. That's an important element. And if we are collecting such a kind of evidence, it's possible to store those evidence in Eurojust, in the new database, and to exchange them, the evidence with all the different prosecutors in charge for a possible prosecution, because you know that there are some possibilities at the national level to do that, not only in a future possible dedicated tribunal that's possible to create, but also at the national level. For the rest, is it possible to go so far? I will ask maybe to Melissa Samuel to say more about the internal job of the joint investigation team first, and now the ICPA that we are creating.
Thank you, Commissioner. A direct reply to your question is that the center is not going to have direct investigative powers. Therefore, the center itself is not able to issue arrest warrants or to file indictments. How the mechanics of the system will work, actually, as I mentioned, it will be a coordination platform. So, as I mentioned, we have today 5 countries which have their own national investigation concerning the crime of aggression based on their national law. These countries are Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Estonia, and obviously Ukraine. So we want to utilize those investigators and prosecutors, and we will build up a new level, a central level, which will coordinate the investigations in those countries. Our ambition is to centralize already available evidence in one database, and we will analyze already collected evidence in order to assess whether different elements of crime are sufficiently documented. Obviously, we want to avoid over-documentation. We want to make sure that we use our resources wisely, but we also would like to ensure that we identify in an early stage possible evidentiary gaps. And with our international partners, we will be able to identify pieces of evidence which are located in different jurisdictions, and to make sure that those pieces of evidence are gathered in an admissible way through existing judicial cooperation channels. So really realize the ICPA as a coordination mechanism, coordination platform, which will provide additional support in ensuring that we build up internationally a case which will then be presented either at national courts or in any future or existing international courts.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. We have a question which has come in online from ZDF, German public broadcaster. Will there be a link or cooperation with the work of the Council of Europe and the register they created in May? Mr. Enders.
We took part, given the level of the Commission, in the creation of such a claims register in the process of the Council of Europe, because it's very important for another kind of goal that we have to start with such a kind of process. I've said many times that we have two main goals. The first one is to bring all the perpetrators of international crimes before justice, but the second one is to be sure that Russia will pay for the reconstruction and for the compensation of damages caused by the Russian aggressions against Ukraine. And what we are doing now is to build such a claims register to collect all the different claims. Then the second step will be to create a commission to analyze the different claims and to decide what are the possible consequences of such a kind of claim. And then, of course, we need to fund possible mechanisms to organize a compensation. And on that we are working very hard, of course. But it's a separate approach than what we are discussing here about the international crimes, certainly the crime of aggression. It's more to be able to organize a real compensation process for the people having had damage caused by the Russian aggression. And you know that now we are working about the funding of such a mechanism with, first of all, the way to not only freeze assets of oligarchs and entities on the sanction list, but maybe to organize a confiscation of part of those assets if there is a criminal offense linked to the sanction list and the people on the sanction list, and that's true decision in justice. It's already the case in the US. We have seen the first decision in the US for $5 million that were informed, and we are working with the member states to do the same at the EU level to fight against violation of sanctions. And then we discuss about the possible use of the profits made on the Russian assets to fund such a mechanism to Ukraine. I'm thinking about the 207 billion euros that it was possible to immobilize in Europe. So reserve the Central Bank of Russia and other assets in Euroclear or in Killstream. And there, if there are some profits, we are working on the possibility to take over the profits and to organize such a funding process. I'm speaking about around 3 billion euro a year if we are thinking about those profits. But we are not yet there. We are in the final discussions to see if it's possible to mobilize such a kind of revenue for the beginning of the funding of the reconstruction and the compensation of damages.
Thank you, Mr. Anders. We have a question from Associated Press and another online question.
Mr. Blake, Mike Cole from the Associated Press. You mentioned that you have, the US has already handed over evidence to the international database. Can you elaborate at all on that, and does the Pentagon support that? And just one other point, what is your preference for a venue for possible trials for the crime of aggression?
Thank you for the questions. Yes, I did note that last week we did make our first contribution to that database, but certainly to protect the integrity of any potential investigations. As you could imagine, I'm not at liberty to give details around what has been contributed. Confident it will not be our last, though. As to your question related to the proper forum, certainly the United States supports an international tribunal, one that is rooted in Ukrainian law, but includes concepts of international law. And we look forward to working with our colleagues in Ukraine, our partners in the EU, and all other actors to ensure that we have a proper forum to ensure justice and accountability here.
Okay, we have two questions which have come in online from Mr. Kostin, one from Ukrainian journalist Mina, and one from a Danish journalist. The first one is, Mr. Kostin, what prevents Ukraine from ratifying the Rome Statute? And the second question to you is, your office has been collecting evidence for the committed crime of aggression last year. What evidence is still missing and how much time do you need to build up a case?
Thank you for your questions. First of all, my position is absolutely strong that Ukraine will ratify Rome Statute and become the part of the family of the members of the Rome Statute and the ICC. I hope that it will be ratified sooner than later, and practically our country is ready to do it. The only question is when the Parliament will be ready to vote. I hope that within our very rapid development in accession to the European Union, this will be an integral part of the package which Ukraine will ratify and adopt in the nearest future. On the other side, Ukraine has already implemented full set of internal legislation which provide the ICC and the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC full competence to investigate and prosecute all international crimes committed in Ukraine in course of Russian aggression. And in coming time, I hope that the opening of the field office, official field office of the prosecutor of the ICC in Ukraine, which is already finalized by documentation and in line with agreement between the Ukrainian government and the ICC, is another evidence of the full cooperation of Ukrainian authorities with the Office of Prosecutor Han and the ICC, and our full commitment and transparent and open cooperation with our colleagues from the Office of Prosecutor Han. And I would say that the historic first arrest warrants against Putin and Lvova Belova is also one of the elements of this cooperation and transparency. To answer to the other question, we launched today the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. As my colleagues have already mentioned, it's about collecting of evidences, it's about exchanging of evidences and information, it's about engaging experts, world-known experts, who will help us to build the case. And being very pragmatic, I believe that one of the tasks of the group of prosecutors and experts who will work starting from today here in The Hague will be not only to exchange evidences, not only to analyze them, but also to build a prosecutorial strategy, how to build the case, and at some stage to prepare drafts of the documents which could be used then by the tribunal. I hope that this tribunal to prosecute the crime of aggression would be international, because the crime of aggression committed by Russia against Ukraine is the crime against global peace and security. And to fill in the gap in international law, we need an international response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kostin. We have one more question from Deutsche Welle, another one here, and another online, and that's the last three questions we can take. Deutsche Welle, please.
Hi, Terry Schultz with Deutsche Welle. I wanted to follow up on that. What is the timeline? I mean, I know it's hard to say, but getting toward this international tribunal, and we don't have any national representatives of the JIT countries here, but is it likely that the trials will begin in one of those countries first? I mean, this is working simultaneously, as I understand, the creation of the international tribunal and, of course, the national prosecution. So where are we likely to see a first trial and when? Thanks.
First of all, let me inform that the Office of Prosecutor General of Ukraine has opened the criminal proceedings in crime of aggression in Ukraine. We have already collected a large number of evidences, and we have already identified more than 600 people who are notified of suspicion in absentia for the crime of aggression against Ukraine, because it's a large number of people who are involved in it. We have already indictments against 312 of them, and we have already 20 people convicted. But the idea of tribunal is to reach the highest military and political leadership of Russia, including so-called members of Troika, to be prosecuted on international level. My position is that we need proper tribunal than fast tribunal. So we will proceed communication with all of our partners who believe that crime of aggression was committed and who know that there should be an international response to prosecute for this crime. But as we proceed with our communication on legal modalities of such tribunal, we today open our new page of creating or launching the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. So we have no time. In course of war, we start to collect evidences, we start to exchange them on international level to prepare future tribunal to be served with initial information.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said there were no members of the JIT. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Costin.
International tribunal? Can anyone else answer on that?
Maybe I want just to say that, first of all, you have...
they just corrected, yes.
No, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine. It's a member, of course. So the GIT, and we've said it for the first time, the ICC is also in the JIT, and you know that the coordination is organized by Eurojust, so it's possible to have all...
I said national representatives, and then I corrected it.
Yes, but national from a member state, because Ukraine is also national, if I may. So you see that we have a lot of representatives on this table. But first of all, I want to say that what we are doing now is very exceptional, because we are doing that during the war, not after. And so we have started very early, not only to collect evidence, but to organize prosecutions and already some trials at the national level, like in Ukraine, and it will be maybe the same in other countries. And so you ask about the national situation, it will be maybe a decision at the national level to go further with the prosecution and a trial also for the crime of aggression. That is just a decision in the national justice system to do that. About the international situation, first of all, is the importance of the event of today. We are starting with the first step. We are starting with such a coordination at the international level of all the possible ways to collect evidence and to prepare a robust fight for the future trial, because it was said by Andrei Kostin, we work also with some experts to be sure it's possible to build a solid fight. And I want just to add that for the long run, we have said that many times, the best solution will be to go to the ICC. So it's the reason why in my discussions with the member states, with the Minister of Justice of the member state, I've asked to table an amendment to the Rome Statute to give the competence to the ICC. But I'm not sure that it will be with a possible application now, very soon, but we'll see. For the rest, we continue to discuss in a core group with member states and other countries and like-minded partners. We will have this week, again, a discussion in the G7 with our partners in Tokyo. And of course, it's very important to have a very broad international support. For the Commission, we are open to work on all the possible solutions, to have a dedicated tribunal, to organize a trial for the crime of aggression. But again, we have to be sure that we will have a very large, very broad support from the international community. It's the reason why we continue the conversations, but we start. And we start with the first layer, the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression. Before to organize a trial, you need to collect evidence, you need to build a solid file, and so we'll continue the discussions on this. But we have said from the beginning, at the Commission level, we are open to work on the different possibilities. Certainly for the long run, to work to give the competence to the ICC. Before that, we have a dedicated tribunal with a very broad international support from many other partners than the member states.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Mr. Costin, you mentioned certain numbers of arrests. The question is coming from the Spanish press agency, EFE. Were those particular arrests just of the crime of aggression, or are they overall numbers of arrests and indictments?
This is not about, once again, this is not about the arrest. This is about indictments and cases which are brought to the courts. And as I mentioned, all of them are done, unfortunately, in absentia, because these people are still in Russia. With regard to all the number of war crimes, the other war crimes, as we have at the moment, we have at the moment registered more than 93,000 incidents of war crimes. And in course of war, our national system is working hard. So for other war crimes, we have 347 people who have been notified of suspicion. And we have indictments against 207 people which are brought to court. And we have already 53 perpetrators has been convicted for different war crimes committed on Ukrainian soil and against Ukrainians.
Thank you for this clarification. We have a question here in the front. Yes, please. Yeah.
So again,
could you use the microphone?
Yes, I will. Thank you. About the international crime of aggression, the crime of aggression and the international tribunal, I see that there are different points of view, because Ukrainian position is clear. You're insisting that it should be a proper international tribunal. Sorry, my name is Tanya Polska. I'm from Ukraine. I forgot to introduce myself. But a senior EU official mentioned that at the level of G7, there is rather an opinion that a hybrid tribunal would be a more realistic option right now. And as I heard from what you said, Mr. Polit, that you also mentioned some kind of an international tribunal, but based on the Ukrainian jurisdiction. So can I get a scope or maybe a flavor of where the discussion is right now on the level of G7? Maybe Mr. Polit, you could answer that question. When you said based on Ukrainian jurisdiction, did you mean exactly a hybrid tribunal, or was it rather something else? Thank you.
I'm sorry, may I? Yes. Just one. Let's forget the word hybrid, because there could be no hybrid accountability for real crimes. So let's use some other wording, okay?
Like what?
Special tribunal for the crime of aggression.
Dedicated.
Special tribunal for the crime of aggression.
And again, I completely agree with my colleagues here. And as Prosecutor General Colston said, we want to get it right, not get it fast. And so we are open to having those important conversations, continuing the G7, as you've already heard, but ensuring that we ultimately arrive at the absolute appropriate forum to address justice and accountability here.
As I mentioned already, we have very intensive and very open discussions with all of our partners and friends. And I believe that we will find common solution which will be in line with the position of Ukrainians who believe that incumbent president, prime minister and minister of foreign affairs Russia should be prosecuted for the crime of aggression. This is very important. And we believe that we will find this solution because we need this tribunal to be internationally credible.
Thank you, Mr. Costin. One very last question from Reuters before we conclude this press conference.
Stephanie Vandenberg from Reuters. I have a question for Mr. Khan about the cooperation with this ICPA. The U.S. has seconded a prosecutor. Can we expect the secondment also of ICC personnel to the center? Will you be sharing all of the evidence you have collected? Will it be a selection? And Mr. Reinders opened the door kind of for also the possibility of maybe at some point an aggression prosecution at the ICC. Do you see that also as a possible endpoint? And then maybe also for Mr. Polit, would the U.S. accept an ICC prosecution for the crime of aggression in situations with Ukraine?
Well, Stephanie, you're very canny. You asked three questions in the guise of one, three different people. So I'll answer it the way that I can fit. I think the first point is, I'll back up a little bit. I do think today's a significant day. I do give Ukraine actually quite a lot of credit that the first time that I've seen anyway, that I can recall, in the way that things have panned out, in the middle of conflict, and such a violent conflict, there is a focus on justice. It's not simply survival or territorial gains, but the United for Justice conference that President Zelensky headlined, that Attorney General Merrick Garland attended in Lviv, that the Commission was present at, that I was present at. It's just an illustration that there is an effort, maybe imperfect, but there's a real effort to make sure that the law is on the front lines and is we utilize it to the maximum of its ability. We all understand the law has massive latent potential, but the challenge is trying to make it be felt by those that need it in a way that will vindicate actually survivors of the Holocaust and all other conflicts that have taken place since. In terms of the organisation, already we're participants in the JIT, we attend the JIT meetings. I think the secondment are a bit different because we're based in The Hague. I don't think we second somebody, but we're here at all the meetings, we have a representation here, we're part of those discussions, and the way I would look at it is, previously there were 3 draws, in terms of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes, in which the various streams of information could run, and one was locked. And the crime of aggression that is under the domestic laws of various member states, Ukraine and other members of Eurojust, and which is an activated crime under their own statute, but for which there are jurisdictional impediments, that drawer is now opened and the information can be filtered, can be put in there and analysed, ready for whenever a national authority, under its own sovereign will, and the independent prosecutors decide to activate it and move forward. The Prosecutor General of Ukraine has given examples, or whether or not there can be further amendments to their own statutes. Now, of course, the law is not static. The law is constant. The beauty of the law is it can innovate, it can be principles and adapt to the needs of humanity, not just states and political interests, but a core need. And the crime of aggression, of course, is one of the foundational principles of the UN Charter. So I think the Commissioner Reynders put it very well, that an amendment, it seems, will be tabled by some states to amend the Rome Statute in a way that the law can be applied consistently, because that also is very important to my mind for the integrity of the law, that it binds as many people as possible, and this can be a starting point, but it can't be a starting and finishing point over the boundaries of Ukraine. It needs to be, in my view, an effort to make sure the law is applied more equally, more consistently, as widely as possible. So I think that definitely is a prospect, but that's for others to decide. We're applying the law we can, and certainly already under the Rome Statute of 19310 we can share information with any national authority, state parties or non-state parties alike, in order to make sure there's more space for justice and less space for impunity. Now, we're not legally obliged. We can receive the benefits of the JIT, but we are also unique. We're a participant of the JIT. It's down to us, based upon our statutory responsibilities, what information we share. We're working very closely with the Prosecutor General of Ukraine. I think that is to be commended. The men and women of Ukraine in his office are working in the most perilous circumstances. I mean, many of you journalists and your colleagues have been there as the shells are falling. It really is. There's been very courageous reporting, but the investigators and prosecutors of Ukraine and men and women of my office are working in a battle zone in a way that presents unique challenges. But unless we collect and preserve the evidence, the hope of accountability that is as wide as possible for as many core crimes under their own statute as possible will become theoretical and illusionary. And of course, whether it's human rights or the Rome Statute, what we're trying to do collectively is make sure these concepts are rendered practical and effective. They're taken off the page of academic journals and are there at the flag of justice on the soil of Ukraine, and actually spread it more widely as well. Because one thing we've seen, if there are these, a la carte menu that I referred to previously, in which in different theatres of conflict the law can be viewed as an optional extra, it's going to undoubtedly lead to more insecurity, more instability, and we need more stability, more security, and therefore more justice.
Thank you, Mr. Polito. There was a question to you as well.
Could you repeat the question?
The question was if it does happen that the ICC gets an amendment that they could try the crime of aggression under their statute, in the case of Ukraine, would the US support that prosecution of the crime of aggression as well, in the same way that you support the internationalized tribunal?
I'm not going to speculate at this time as to what that response may be, but I will tell you that the Department of Justice has taken the position that the ICC's charges and arrest warrants against Putin were justified. And as I said at the outset, we are supporting all efforts, whether by the ICC, whether by national, regional, international actors in this space, who are all fighting to ensure accountability and justice against Russia for perpetrating this war of aggression against Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Polit. Mr. Hamra, you would like to react as well?
Yes, thank you so much, because I understand that the focus of the discussion is much more about the new tribunal, and which will be special, hybrid, or whatever nature it will have. In my opinion, this is not important at this stage in where the trial will happen. While the negotiations are still ongoing, we will definitely follow those investigations or those discussions. However, as far as investigation of the crime of aggression, it's important that we start now. In the past, all aggression-related investigations have started after the conflict. So when you clearly had those who are winners and who had to capitulate, we are doing this for the first time as the conflict happens. Also, as it was mentioned, this is a first aggression-related investigation after the Second World War. And again, the circumstances are completely different. Today, we have a huge amount of evidence which is available in different jurisdictions. And I keep saying, never in the history we had more evidence about the aggression as we have today. We are speaking about different videos, aerial photography, GPS, we intercepted communication, data on mobile phones and so on. All this requires a huge effort. This is why we have to join other forces and to support the national investigations, because they are confronted with unparalleled actually challenge. To have the investigation concerning the crime of aggression, it's a big thing. First of all, we have to prove the aggression. And this can be done, for example, through evidence of bombardments, blockage of ports, attacks by armed forces on land, sea and air. Now you see the scope of the challenge, because you know how many different incidents actually happened in Ukraine. But the evidence concerning bombardments or blockage of ports and so on is not enough. We have to also link all these attacks with certain people who are in the leading position, either in the political leadership or military leadership. And this will be another big challenge ahead of us, because we have to ensure that, first of all, we have admissible evidence. Secondly, that we have all elements of crime properly documented. And then the third one will be that we will evaluate, assess all the evidence, translate those evidence into 2 languages, and prepare a truly international file for either domestic courts or international courts, whether present or future. So I think it's very important to understand the scope, why we are doing here, what we are doing here, and why I believe that what is happening now is so exceptional.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. Last reaction from Mr. Kostin, please.
Dear colleagues, you see here the unity of us. The unity is very wide. As Kenneth yesterday told, it's a diversity event of unity. And we are united in order to ensure
full accountability for all crimes committed, including the crime of aggression. If crime of aggression should not have been committed, there would be no other 93,000 incidents of war crimes. And this day-to-day, for me, and I believe for my colleagues, is an evidence that establishment of special tribunal for the crime of aggression is now inevitable. It will be established because we start our work today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costin. Thank you to all speakers, and thank you all here for your, and those who follow online. This concludes this press conference. We will keep you updated regularly, and a recording will be available on our YouTube channel later on. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.